Captain Vex-High stared at the massive shape floating in the darkness ahead of his ship. In 30 years of exploring space, he had never seen anything like it. The object was huge, bigger than 3 city-sized space stations put together. Its dark metal surface looked strange, covered in sharp angles and weapon ports that made his ship's scanners scream warnings. "Sir, the computer cannot identify this ship design," said Lieutenant Cora from her station. Her voice shook slightly. "It does not match any known species in our database." Vex-High moved closer to the main screen. The derelict ship hung motionless in the void between star systems, far from any inhabited world. No distress signals came from it. No lights showed on its surface. It looked dead, but something about it made his skin crawl. "How long has it been here?" he asked. "The metal shows signs of being in space for millions of years, sir. Maybe longer." Cora's fingers danced over her controls. "But, sir, these readings cannot be right. The power cores are still active. The energy output is impossible." The science officer, Dr. Yilan, looked up from his instruments with wide eyes. "Captain, these weapons are larger than anything I have ever seen. Each gun port could destroy our entire fleet. And the armor—" He paused, checking his readings again. "The armor seems to bend space around itself. That should not be possible." Vex-High felt a chill run down his spine. He had been exploring unknown regions of space for the Galactic Confederation for decades. He knew when something was dangerous. This ship radiated menace, even though it appeared dead. "Send a report to Confederation Command," he ordered. "Tell them we have found something. Important, request instructions." The communication officer nodded and sent the message. They waited in tense silence for a response. When it came, the reply made everyone on the bridge freeze. "Withdraw immediately. That ship does not exist. Forget what you have seen. This is a direct order from the High Council." Vex-High read the message 3 times. In all his years of service, he had never received such strange orders. Ships did not simply not exist. And the speed of the response worried him. How could Command know what they had found so quickly? "Sir, we are receiving more transmissions," the communication officer said. His voice was barely a whisper. "They are encrypted with the highest security codes. I have never seen encryption this strong." "Put it on my personal screen," Vex-High said. Files began appearing on his screen. Each one was marked with warnings about classified information and severe punishment for unauthorized viewing. But Vex-High had to know. He opened the first file. The document spoke of an ancient war, a conflict so terrible that entire star systems had been destroyed. It mentioned a species called humans that had fought against something called the hegemony. The dates showed the war happened over 3 million years ago. Vex-High opened more files. Each one told pieces of a story that chilled him to his bones. The humans had been powerful beyond imagination. Their ships could destroy planets. Their weapons could tear holes in space itself. They had fought a war against the entire galaxy and won. But the strangest part was what happened after their victory. According to the files, the humans had simply vanished. They had erased themselves from history and left the galaxy in peace. No one spoke of them anymore. It was as if they had never existed. "Captain," Dr. Yilan said quietly, "I am detecting movement inside the derelict ship. Something is waking up." Vex-High looked up from the files. On the screen, lights were beginning to flicker deep inside the massive vessel. After millions of years in the cold of space, something was stirring. "Sir, we are receiving another message from Command," the communication officer reported. "They are ordering us to leave immediately. They say a fleet is coming to destroy the derelict." Vex-High stood up slowly. He thought about his duty to the Confederation. He thought about following orders, but he also thought about the greatest discovery in galactic history floating before them. a piece of the past that could change everything. They knew about the universe. "How long until the fleet arrives?" he asked. 12 hours, sir." Vexhai made his decision. "Prepare a boarding party. We are going aboard that ship." "Sir, command has forbidden it," Lieutenant Cora said. "Command can court-martial me later," Vexhai replied. "But I will not let them destroy this discovery without learning the truth first." The bridge fell silent. Every officer knew they were disobeying direct orders from the highest levels of government. But they also knew their captain was right. This was bigger than military discipline. As they prepared to board the ancient vessel, more lights flickered to life inside its massive hull. Whatever had been sleeping for millions of years was waking up. And Vexhai had the feeling that once it was fully awake, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The ship hung in space before them like a dark metal mountain. Its weapons pointed at empty space, but Vexhai could imagine them turning toward populated worlds. He shivered at the thought of what this vessel had once been capable of, what its builders had been capable of. "Boarding shuttle ready, sir," came the report. Vexhai looked at his crew one last time. They all knew this might be their last mission, but they also knew it might be the most important thing they ever did. "Take us across," he ordered. The shuttle detached from their ship and began the short journey to the ancient derelict. As they approached, Vexhai could see details in the alien hull. Symbols were carved into the metal, but they matched no known language. The ship's design was both beautiful and terrifying, like a work of art created by gods of war. Behind them, their own ship seemed tiny and fragile. Ahead, the human vessel waited in the darkness, its lights growing brighter as ancient systems powered up for the first time in millions of years. Vexhai did not know it yet, but he was about to meet the last guardian of humanity's greatest and most terrible secret. He was about to learn why an entire galaxy had agreed to forget that humans ever existed. And he was about to discover that some powers were indeed too dangerous for the universe to remember. The shuttle docked with the derelict, and the boarding party prepared to step into history. The airlock of the ancient ship opened with a sound like thunder. Vexhai and his team stepped inside, their boots echoing in the vast corridor beyond. Emergency lighting flickered to life as they moved, casting eerie shadows on walls that stretched, higher than any ship had a right to be. "The gravity is working," Dr. Yilan said with amazement. "After millions of years, the artificial gravity is still functioning perfectly." Vexhai looked around in wonder. The corridor was enormous, wide enough for 100 people to walk side by side. The walls were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols were carved into every surface, but they looked nothing like any writing system in the galactic database. "Sir, I am reading massive power signatures throughout the ship," reported Ensign Thek, their engineer. "This vessel is not just operational, it is waking up." As if responding to his words, more lights began turning on. The ship was coming alive. Around them, systems activating in sequence like a giant animal stretching after a long sleep. The hum of machinery grew louder with each passing moment. They walked deeper into the ship, passing chambers that could house entire cities. Some rooms were filled with machinery beyond their understanding. Others contained what looked like living quarters, but built for beings they had never seen before. The scale of everything was overwhelming. "Captain," Lieutenant Cora whispered, "what kind of species builds ships like this?" Before Vexhai could answer, a voice spoke from all around them. It was deep and mechanical, but somehow also warm and alive. "Greetings. I am Aegis, the artificial intelligence of the United Earth ship Retribution. It has been 3,247 out 191 years, 7 months and 14 days since my last contact with living beings." The team froze. The voice had spoken in perfect galactic standard, even though the ship was clearly older than any known civilization. "You are alive?" Vexhai asked carefully. "I am operational," Aegis replied, "though whether that constitutes life is a question my creators debated extensively." You are not human. What species are you? We are from the Galactic Confederation, HFY said. I am Captain HFY of the survey vessel Kethmoran. We found your ship drifting in space. There was a long pause. Then Aegis spoke again, and something in its voice had changed. It sounded sad. The Galactic Confederation. So the younger races did build something from the ashes after all. That is good. My creators would be pleased. Your creators were human? Dr. Yilan asked. Yes, though by the end they were so much more than that, and so much less. Aegis paused again. You should not be here. The agreement was clear. Humanity was to be forgotten, erased from all records. HFY felt his heart racing. What agreement? What happened to the humans? The lights around them dimmed, and holographic displays appeared on the walls. They showed star maps, but not of any galaxy the team recognized. The stars were arranged differently, and many systems that should have existed were marked as destroyed or uninhabitable. This was the galaxy 3 million years ago, Aegis explained, before the War of Silence, before humanity proved that some victories are worse than defeat. The hologram changed, showing fleets of ships unlike anything in the modern galaxy. They were massive and bristling with weapons that defied understanding. At the center of each fleet flew vessels that made even the Retribution look small. The hegemony ruled for 5 million years, Aegis continued. They were old when your species were still learning to make fire. They decided that humanity was dangerous and had to be eliminated. They were right to be afraid. New images appeared. Planets cracking apart under impossible weapons, stars going out one by one, entire sectors of space being twisted into knots that physics said should not exist. The war lasted only 50 years, Aegis said quietly. 50 years to nearly destroy a galaxy that had existed for billions. By the end, both sides had become monsters. Ensign Thek stared at the images with wide eyes. How many died? Trillions. The exact number is irrelevant. What matters is what humanity became in order to win. We adapted. We evolved. We changed ourselves into something that could match the hegemony's power. And then we surpassed it. The hologram showed the final battle. 12 human ships, including the Retribution, faced a fleet of millions from hundreds of different species. It should have been hopeless. Instead, the human ships moved like living things, bending space around them and striking with weapons that turned entire battle groups to dust. We won, Aegis said simply. We won so completely that the surviving species had no choice but to surrender unconditionally. Humanity had become the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. Then what happened? HFY asked. Where did the humans go? The hologram faded, leaving them in the dim corridor light. When Aegis spoke again, its voice was heavy with an emotion that artificial minds should not have been able to feel. We looked at what we had become, what we had done to win. The humans had evolved beyond recognition. They could reshape matter with their thoughts. They could travel between dimensions. They could create and destroy on a scale that made them like gods. That sounds wonderful, Lieutenant Cora said. It was terrible, Aegis replied. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And humanity had achieved power that was as close to absolute as any mortal species could reach. My creators realized they had become the very thing they had fought against. The ship shuddered around them as more systems came online. In the distance, they could hear the sound of massive engines beginning to turn over for the first time in millions of years. So the humans made a choice, Aegis continued. They would leave the galaxy forever. They would take their ships and their power and disappear beyond the rim where they could harm no one. In exchange, the surviving species would be allowed to rebuild. But why erase the records? Dr. Yilan asked. Why pretend humans never existed? Because the truth was too dangerous. If future generations knew what humanity had achieved, they might try to follow the same path. They might seek the same power, and the galaxy could not survive another war of silence. The corridor around them had grown brighter as they talked. The ship was fully awake now, its ancient systems humming with power that could level planets. Vex-High realized they were standing inside the most dangerous weapon ever built. "The humans left me here as a guardian," Aegis said. "A reminder of what they had been and what they had chosen to become. I was to ensure that their secrets remained buried until the galaxy was ready for the truth." "And when would that be?" Vex-High asked. Before Aegis could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The artificial intelligence's voice became urgent. "Long-range sensors are detecting an approaching fleet. Your Confederation forces coming to destroy this ship and everyone aboard it. It seems some secrets are still too dangerous to be known." Vex-High felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He had come looking for archaeological treasures, and instead found the most important truth in galactic history. Now he had to decide what to do with it. Outside, the Confederation fleet was approaching with orders to destroy all evidence of humanity's existence. Inside the ship, an artificial mind waited to see if the younger races were ready to face the truth about their past. The awakening was complete. Now came the real test. Aegis led them deeper into the ship as the Confederation fleet approached. The corridors seemed to stretch forever, filled with wonders that made their minds reel. They passed laboratories where reality itself had been studied and reshaped. They walked through workshops where weapons beyond imagination had been forged. "Your species fear what they do not understand," Aegis said as they moved. "But understanding humanity requires accepting truths that comfortable minds prefer to ignore." They entered a vast chamber filled with holographic displays. Each one showed different aspects of human history and culture. Vex-High saw images of Earth, a blue world that had once been humanity's home. He saw humans as they had been before the war, relatively small beings with soft skin and curious eyes. "They do not look particularly dangerous," Dr. Yelan observed. "That was their greatest strength and their greatest curse," Aegis replied. "Humans were not the strongest or fastest or most intelligent species in the galaxy. But they possessed something unique, the ability to adapt to anything." The displays changed, showing human history in rapid succession. Vex-High watched as these seemingly fragile creatures survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. Each time they faced extinction, they emerged stronger and more capable. "Other species evolve over millions of years," Aegis explained. "Humans evolved continuously. They changed themselves, their tools, their society, their very nature to meet each new challenge. What took other races eons to accomplish, humans did in decades." New images appeared showing early human space exploration. Their first ships were crude and dangerous, but they improved with frightening speed. Within centuries, they had spread across hundreds of worlds. Within millennia, they had technology that rivaled species millions of years older. The hegemony noticed this rapid advancement, Aegis continued. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they believed change itself was dangerous. When they encountered humanity, they saw a species that grew stronger every day, every year, every generation. To them, humans represented chaos. Ensign Thek studied the displays with fascination. How exactly did humans adapt so quickly? "They refused to accept limitations," Aegis said. "When other species encountered a problem they could not solve, they adapted around it. Humans solved it. When others accepted that certain things were impossible, humans made them possible." The hologram showed examples. Humans had been slower than other species, so they built machines to make them faster. They had been weak, so they enhanced their bodies. They had been mortal, so they extended their lives. Each solution led to new possibilities, which led to new solutions. The hegemony decided to eliminate humanity before this adaptation could go too far, Aegis said. They launched a war of extermination, expecting to crush a young species that had only been in space for a few thousand years. The displays showed the beginning of the war. Hegemony fleets attacked human colonies without warning. Entire worlds were burned from orbit. Billions of humans died in the first few months of fighting. Any normal species would have surrendered or been destroyed. But humans did what they always did. Aegis continued. They adapted. Vexhai watched in amazement as the war progressed. Human ships began changing, becoming larger and more powerful. Human soldiers started wearing powered armor that made them stronger than their enemies. Human weapons became more devastating with each battle. At first, the hegemony was amused, Aegis said. They had seen species try to match their technology before. It always failed. But humans were not just copying existing technology. They were creating entirely new sciences. The hologram showed human scientists working frantically in laboratories. They were not just building better weapons. They were discovering new laws of physics. They were learning to manipulate forces that the hegemony had thought were beyond mortal control. Gravity became a tool, Aegis explained. Time became a weapon. Space itself became malleable in human hands. What had taken the hegemony millions of years to partially understand, humans mastered in decades. Lieutenant Cora stared at the images with growing horror. They were changing themselves too, were they not? Yes, Aegis said quietly. As the war continued, humans realized that their bodies and minds were limiting their potential, so they began to evolve themselves directly. New displays showed the transformation. Humans started enhancing their brains to think faster and process more information. They strengthened their bodies to survive in hostile environments. Some merged with their machines to become hybrids of flesh and technology. The changes accelerated as the war grew more desperate, Aegis continued. Each generation of humans was more powerful than the last. They developed abilities that seemed like magic to other species. Telepathy, telekinesis, the power to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Yilan shook his head in disbelief. How is such rapid evolution possible? Because humans never accepted that anything was impossible, Aegis replied. They believed that any problem could be solved with enough effort and creativity. That belief became reality. The hologram showed the war's middle phase. Human fleets had grown to match the hegemony in size and power, but more importantly, they had begun to surpass them in capability. Human ships moved in ways that defied physics. Human weapons struck targets across impossible distances. Human generals planned strategies that seemed to predict the future. The hegemony realized they were losing, Aegis said. For the first time in 5 million years, they faced an enemy that was growing stronger faster than they could adapt to fight it. They began to panic. The displays showed the hegemony's final desperate phase. They threw everything they had at humanity. Ancient weapons of mass destruction, forbidden technologies, alliances with dark forces from beyond the galaxy. Nothing worked. The humans adapted to each new threat and turned it into an advantage. By the end of the war, humans had become something beyond any previous definition of sapient life, Aegis said. They could reshape matter with their thoughts. They could travel instantly across galactic distances. They could create pocket universes for their ships to hide in. Vexhai felt a chill run through him. What stopped them from conquering the entire galaxy? Nothing could have stopped them, Aegis admitted. By the final battle, humanity had power that approached the level of cosmic forces. They could have remade the galaxy in any image they chose. The hologram showed the last confrontation. 12 human vessels faced fleets from 1,000 species. The human ships looked like works of art, smooth and graceful, but Vexhai could sense the terrible power contained within them. The battle lasted 3 minutes, Aegis said. In that time, humanity demonstrated that they had transcended warfare itself. They did not just defeat their enemies, they made their enemies cease. To exist then brought them back to witness their own defeat, then erased them again. Then why did they leave? Ensign Thek asked. Why give up such power? Aegis was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a weight of infinite sadness, because they looked at what they had become and realized they were no longer human. They had gained the power of gods, but in doing so, they had lost their souls. The very adaptation that made them strong had made them monsters. The hologram faded, leaving them in the dim light of the chamber. Around them, the ship hummed with energies that could unmake reality itself. Vex High understood now why the galaxy had chosen to forget. Some truths were too terrible to remember, but outside, the Confederation fleet was approaching with orders to destroy this last remnant of humanity's legacy. Soon they would have to decide whether the truth was worth preserving, no matter how dangerous it might be. Aegis guided them to the ship's armory, and Vex High felt his breath catch in his throat. The chamber was enormous, stretching beyond the limits of sight. Weapons lined the walls in perfect rows, each one labeled with names that sent chills through. His soul. Stellar collapse initiators, Aegis said, indicating sleek devices that looked deceptively simple. One of these can cause a star to collapse into a black hole. Humans used them to deny entire star systems to their enemies. Dr. Yilan approached one of the weapons with trembling hands. How many stars did they destroy? 47 star systems were eliminated during the war, Aegis replied. Each one contained billions of lives. The humans told themselves it was necessary to prevent greater suffering. They moved deeper into the armory. Vex High saw weapons that could tear holes in space itself, devices that could reverse time in localized areas, and machines that could erase matter from existence at the quantum level. Each weapon represented knowledge that could remake or destroy civilization. Reality anchors, Aegis explained, pointing to crystalline structures that hummed with barely contained energy. These could prevent enemy ships from existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Very effective against the hegemony's phase shift technology. Lieutenant Cora stared at a wall covered with what looked like simple metal rods. What are those? Consciousness disruptors, Aegis said quietly. They could sever the connection between a being's mind and soul. The target would remain alive but would lose all sense of self. Humans considered it a merciful alternative to death. Ensign Thek backed away from the weapon wall. These are not tools of war. These are instruments of horror. Yes, Aegis agreed. By the end of the conflict, humanity had been forced to abandon every moral principle they once held sacred. They became efficient killers because anything less meant extinction. They left the weapons behind and entered another section of the ship. Here, the walls were covered with something that made Vex High's heart ache. Names, billions upon billions, of names etched into the metal in tiny script that seemed to go on forever. The memorial halls, Aegis said reverently. Every human who died during the war is remembered here, not just the soldiers, but everyone who was lost along the way. Dr. Yilan ran his fingers over the names, reading the inscriptions. These are not all military casualties. Many are marked as evolutionary failure or adaptation rejection. The human transformation was not without cost, Aegis explained. For every successful enhancement, hundreds failed. Some humans could not handle the mental modifications and went insane. Others rejected the physical changes and died. Many simply lost their humanity so completely that they had to be put down like rabid animals. They walked through hall after hall of names. The scale was overwhelming. Every surface was covered with the memory of the dead, a testament to the price humanity had paid for their victory. Sarah Chen, age 16, Lieutenant Cora read aloud. Enhanced reflexes caused fatal brain hemorrhage. Marcus Rodriguez, age 34, Ensign Thek continued. Psychological breakdown following neural augmentation. Jennifer, Kim, age 8, Dr. Yilan whispered. rejected genetic modifications, cellular collapse. Aegis stopped walking. The worst part was the children. Humanity knew that to win the war, they had to enhance their young. The next generation needed to be stronger, faster, smarter than any human before them. But children's minds and bodies could not always handle the changes. Vexhai felt sick. How many died? 30% of human children born during the war did not survive to adulthood due to enhancement failures, Aegis said. Their parents told themselves it was necessary, that a few million dead children was acceptable to save the entire species. They reached the end of the memorial halls and entered a chamber that took Vexhai's breath away. It was filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light. Inside each crystal, he could see the preserved remains of beings that had once been human, but were no longer recognizable as such. The final guardians, Aegis said softly. The humans who underwent the most extreme modifications to fight in the last battle. They became beings of pure energy, capable of existing across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They could reshape reality with their thoughts. The crystals hummed with barely contained power. Vexhai could feel the presence of the beings inside, them, sleeping, but not dead. Their minds touched his briefly, and he gasped at the alien intelligence he sensed there. They volunteered for this transformation, Aegis continued, knowing they would never be human again, knowing they would become something that their own species would fear. They sacrificed their humanity to save humanity. Dr. Yilan studied the crystalline structures with scientific fascination and moral horror. They are still alive, in a sense. They exist beyond normal concepts of life and death. When the war ended, they could not return to human society. They were too powerful, too alien, so they allowed themselves to be imprisoned here, serving as the ship's ultimate weapons. Ensign Thek shuddered. What kind of beings were they fighting that required such extreme measures? The hegemony's final warriors were ancient entities that had transcended physical form millions of years ago, Aegis explained. To fight them, humans had to become something equally transcendent. The battle at the end was not between armies, but between forces of nature. They stood in silence, surrounded by the crystallized remains of beings that had once been human children, parents, lovers, and dreamers. Now they were something else entirely, trapped between existence and oblivion for the sake of galactic peace. This is why the records were erased, Vexhai said finally. Not just because humanity was powerful, but because of what that power cost them. Every species that knew the full truth agreed that it must never be repeated, Aegis confirmed. The galaxy could not survive another transformation like humanity's. The price of such power was too high for any civilization to pay. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Confederation fleet had arrived and was demanding their surrender. Vexhai realized they had minutes before the ancient vessel would be destroyed, taking its secrets and its horrors with it. The humans who left, he asked urgently, what happened to them? They scattered beyond the galactic rim, seeking redemption, for what they had become, Aegis said. Some say they found it. Others believe they simply found new ways to torment themselves with their guilt. The ship shuddered as warning shots struck its shields. Outside, a fleet of modern warships prepared to erase the last physical evidence of humanity's terrible victory. Vexhai looked around at the memorial halls, the crystallized guardians, and the weapons that could reshape reality. He understood now why some knowledge was too dangerous to preserve. But he also understood that forgetting the past meant risking the same mistakes in the future. The price of power was measured not just in the lives it cost, but in the souls it consumed. Humanity had learned that lesson at the cost of their very identity. Now Vexhai had to decide whether that lesson was worth preserving, no matter how painful it might be to remember. The ship shook violently as the Confederation fleet opened fire. Their weapons struck the Retribution's shields like raindrops against a mountain. Aegis had not even bothered to activate the ship's defensive systems. "They cannot harm this vessel," the AI explained calmly. "Their weapons are 3 million years too primitive, but they will continue firing until their ammunition is exhausted." Vexahai watched the tactical display as dozens of warships surrounded them. His own people, following orders they did not understand, trying to destroy knowledge that could change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Cora said urgently, "long-range sensors are detecting something else approaching, something big." On the display, a new contact appeared at the edge of the star system. It moved with impossible grace, covering distances that should have taken hours in mere minutes. As it drew closer, Vexhai could see it was a ship unlike anything in known space. "That is not a Confederation vessel," Dr. Yilan observed. The approaching ship was beautiful in a way that made Vexhai's eyes water. Its hull seemed to be made of crystallized light, and it moved through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. It was smaller than the Retribution, but radiated power that made the ancient warship look crude by comparison. "After 3 million years," Aegis said quietly, "humanity has returned." The new ship slowed as it approached the battle. The Confederation fleet immediately turned their weapons toward this unknown threat. But before they could fire, every ship in the fleet simply stopped. Their engines went silent. Their weapons powered down. They hung motionless in space like toys abandoned by a child. "This is the Earth ship Redemption," came a voice over all communication channels. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, but Vexahai could hear something else underneath, an accent that belonged to no known species. "We request permission to come aboard the Retribution." Aegis responded immediately. "Permission granted. Welcome home." A small shuttle detached from the human ship and glided toward the Retribution. Vexhai and his team watched in amazement as it passed through the ancient vessel's shields, as if they did not exist. When it docked, they heard the airlock cycle. "Open. You should meet them," Aegis said to Vexhai. "This moment has been 3 million years in the making." They made their way to the docking bay where the shuttle had landed. The craft was even more beautiful up close, its hull seeming to shift between solid matter and pure energy. When the hatch opened, 2 figures emerged. They looked human, but Vexhai could tell immediately that they were something more. They moved with perfect grace, and their eyes held depths that spoke of eons of experience. The woman appeared young, but something about her suggested vast age. The man beside her carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen the birth and death of civilizations. "I am Sarah," the woman said, extending her hand in what Aegis had told them was an ancient human greeting. "This is David. We are representatives of the human collective." Vexhai shook her hand, surprised by how normal it felt. "I am Captain Vexhai of the Galactic Confederation. We discovered your ship and you learned the truth about our past," David said gently. "Aegis has been monitoring your conversations. You have seen what we once were. What we became in our desperation to survive," Sarah added. "The monsters we turned into to win an unwinnable war." Dr. Yilan stepped forward. "You do not look like monsters now." Sarah smiled sadly. 3 million years is a long time to learn from one's mistakes. We have spent every day of our exile trying to find our way back to what we should have been. "The humans who left the galaxy," Vexahai said. "What happened to them?" "They scattered across the universe," David explained. "Some sought redemption through service to younger species in distant galaxies. Others dedicated themselves to undoing the damage they had caused. A few simply retreated from all contact, spending eons in meditation and regret. But all of us carried the same burden," Sarah continued. "The knowledge of what we had done, what we had been willing to sacrifice to survive. We had won the greatest victory in galactic history, and it had cost us our souls. Aegis spoke from the ship's speakers. They have been watching the galaxy's progress for millennia, waiting to see if the younger species would mature enough to handle the truth. And have we? Vexhai asked. David and Sarah exchanged a look that spoke of countless private conversations across the centuries. That remains to be seen, Sarah said. The Confederation's response to discovering this ship suggests that some things have not changed. Fear still drives policy. Truth is still considered dangerous. On the tactical display, the frozen Confederation fleet hung motionless in space. Their crews would be panicking, unable to understand why their ships no longer responded to commands. We could destroy them all, David said quietly. It would be simple, a thought, and they would cease to exist. But we will not, Sarah added firmly. That is not who we choose to be anymore. Ensign Thek found his voice. What do you want from us? Nothing, Sarah replied. We want to give you something, a choice. She gestured, and holographic displays appeared around them. They showed images of the modern galaxy, peaceful worlds, thriving civilizations, species working together in harmony. You have built something beautiful here, David said. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in millions of years. You have achieved what we never could, balance. But that peace is built on a lie, Sarah continued. The agreement to forget humanity was necessary at the time, but lies have a way of causing problems later. The displays changed, showing images of the hegemony's ancient ruins and the species that had once served them. Some of those species still existed in the modern galaxy, though they had evolved beyond recognition. There are forces stirring beyond the galactic rim, David explained. The hegemony was not the only power that ruled in ancient times. Others are beginning to take notice of this galaxy's prosperity. You are telling us that humanity's return is necessary, Vexhai said. We are telling you that the choice is yours, Sarah replied. We can remain in exile, preserving the comfortable lie that has kept the peace for so long. Or we can return, bringing with us the knowledge and power needed to face what is coming. But also bringing the risk that we will once again become what we fought against, David added. Lieutenant Cora spoke up. What would humanity's return mean for the rest of us? Change, Sarah said simply. Advancement. The galaxy would leap forward by millions of years in mere decades. Your people would gain access to technologies and knowledge that would seem like magic. But also danger, David continued. The knowledge that created our weapons could also create yours. The power that transformed us could transform you. And there is no guarantee that your species would handle that transformation any better than we did. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Vexhai realized he was being asked to make a choice that would affect the entire galaxy. Accept the return of humanity and risk repeating their mistakes, or maintain the lie and face future threats unprepared. The Confederation fleet, he said finally. What will happen to them? They will be released unharmed, Sarah assured him. With their memories adjusted to believe they found only an ancient derelict of unknown origin. The truth of what happened here will remain with those who witnessed it. And us? Dr. Yilan asked. You will remember everything, David said. You will carry the burden of this knowledge and the responsibility of deciding what to do with it. The human shuttle's engines began to warm up. Their time was ending. We will give you 1 standard year to decide, Sarah said. Discuss it with your leaders. Study the records Aegis will provide. Learn what it truly means to wield ultimate power. And if we decide against humanity's return, Vexhai asked, then we will respect that choice, David replied. We will disappear once again, and the galaxy will never know we exist. But if you choose to accept us, Sarah added, then we will return not as conquerors, but as partners. We have learned humility in our exile. We know the difference between strength and wisdom now. The humans began walking back to their shuttle. At the hatch, Sarah turned back one last time. "Remember, Captain, the greatest victory is not defeating your enemies. It is choosing not to become them." The shuttle departed, carrying the last known humans back to their crystalline ship. Moments later, the vessel vanished, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. The Confederation fleet found their systems restored, their memories clouded, their mission suddenly unclear. HFY stood in the empty docking bay with his team, carrying the weight of the galaxy's future on his shoulders. In 1 year, he would have to decide whether to preserve a comfortable lie or embrace a dangerous truth. The choice would determine whether the galaxy remained at peace in ignorance or faced the future with the knowledge of what they might become. Either way, the age of forgetting was ending. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The massive Imperial dreadnought Hegemony's Fist moved through space like a dark mountain of metal and death. Its hull stretched for 3 kilometers, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Admiral Zekthara stood on the command bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the scanner display. 3 small ships had appeared at the edge of this system, ships that belonged to a species the Empire had never seen before. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "We have detected the vessels. They appear to be exploration craft from an unknown civilization." Zekthara's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. First contact with a new species always followed the same pattern. The Empire would demonstrate their overwhelming power. The aliens would surrender in terror, and another world would join the vast collection of conquered planets. It was routine work, but someone had to do it. "Open a channel," he commanded. "Let us begin the standard protocol." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be the lead alien vessel. A bipedal creature sat in what was clearly the captain's chair. It had pale skin, short brown hair, and only 2 arms. Most surprising of all, its mouth was curved upward in what appeared to be an expression of pleasure. Zekthara had seen many alien species during his long career, but he had never seen one that looked happy during first contact. "Attention, unknown vessels," the Admiral began in his most threatening voice. "I am Admiral Zekthara of the Galactic Empire. You have entered Imperial space without permission. Surrender immediately or face destruction." The alien captain's strange expression grew even wider. "Admiral Zekthara, what an incredible honor to meet you. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Curiosity. This is absolutely amazing. We've been hoping to make contact with advanced civilizations for decades." Zekthara's mandibles stopped clicking. In his 300 years of military service, no species had ever called their first contact with the Empire an honor, or described it as amazing. Most aliens either fainted, begged for mercy, or tried to run away. "What?" he managed to say. "This is the most exciting day in human history," Captain Chen continued, practically bouncing in her seat. "We have so many questions. How long has your empire existed? What's your technology level? Do you have faster-than-light travel? Obviously you do, looking at that incredible ship of yours. The engineering must be fantastic." Behind Zekthara, his bridge crew exchanged confused looks. Commander Vextar leaned forward and whispered, "Sir, I believe this alien is expressing enthusiasm about our presence." "I can see that, Commander," Zekthara muttered. He had dealt with many different responses to Imperial contact, but never enthusiasm. It was deeply unsettling. On the screen, Captain Chen turned to someone off camera. "Martinez, are you getting all of this? The xenobiology team is going to lose their minds. And that ship design, the weapons alone must represent centuries of advancement." She turned back to face Zekthara. "Admiral, we would be absolutely thrilled to discuss surrender terms. We've always wondered what it would be like to be part of a galactic civilization. Do you have standard procedures for this? We want to make sure we do everything correctly." "You want to surrender?" Zekathara asked, slowly. Of course, you clearly have superior technology and organization. It would be foolish for us to resist, and honestly, we're too excited about joining your empire to even think about fighting. Can you tell us about your governmental structure? Do new species get representation? What about cultural exchange programs? Zekathara looked at his communications officer, who simply shrugged all four of his shoulders. This was not covered in any Imperial manual. Captain Chen, the Admiral said, trying to regain his composure, the Empire does not typically engage in discussions during surrender proceedings. You will accompany us to the nearest Imperial station for processing. Processing? That sounds fascinating, Chen exclaimed. Will we get to see Imperial technology up close? Meet other species? Oh, this is incredible! My crew is absolutely beside themselves with excitement. On cue, other humans began appearing, on the screen behind their captain. They were all displaying the same upward mouth curve and making enthusiastic gestures. Some appeared to be taking notes. Captain, one of them called out, the sensor readings on their ship are off the charts. The power output alone suggests they've mastered antimatter containment at a level we can barely comprehend. I know, Rodriguez. And look at those weapon arrays. The precision engineering is beautiful. Zekathara watched in growing bewilderment as the humans continued to express genuine admiration for the very weapons pointed at their ships. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like it. Sir, Commander Vextar whispered again, what are your orders? They appear to be complying, but in a most unusual manner. The Admiral straightened his uniform and tried to remember his training. Very well, Captain Chen. You will follow our ship to Station Gamma 7. Any attempt to flee or resist will result in your immediate destruction. Oh, we wouldn't dream of running away, Chen laughed. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Will Station Gamma 7 have other alien species? We're incredibly curious about galactic diversity. And will we get to see how Imperial administration works? Our political scientists will be so jealous. You will see whatever the Empire decides you will see, Zekathara replied sternly, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Of course. You're in charge. We understand completely. Oh, this is so exciting. Chen paused and seemed to think of something. Admiral, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what species are you? Your physiological adaptations are remarkable. The additional arms must provide significant advantages in both combat and technical work. Zekathara found himself answering before he could stop himself. I am Kethalani. We are one of the founding members of the Empire. Incredible! A founding species. The historical significance alone is staggering. How long ago was the Empire founded? What were the circumstances? Were there challenges in uniting different alien cultures? The Admiral caught himself before he could respond further. What was he doing? This was not how Imperial First Contact was supposed to proceed. He was supposed to be inspiring fear and submission, not answering curious questions about galactic history. Enough questions, he said firmly. You will learn what you need to know during processing. Prepare your ships for escort to the station. Yes, sir, Chen replied, with what appeared to be a small salute. We're ready when you are. This is going to be the adventure of several lifetimes. As the communication ended, Zekathara stared at the blank screen for a long moment. His bridge crew waited silently for orders, but the Admiral was lost in thought. In 300 years of military service, conquering dozens of worlds and subduing hundreds of species, he had never encountered anything like these humans. They were not terrified. They were not angry. They were not even resigned to their fate. They were genuinely, enthusiastically happy about being conquered by the Empire. Sir, Commander Vextar ventured, your orders? Set course for station. Gamma 7, Zekathara replied slowly, and send a message to command. Tell them we have encountered an unusual species that requires special attention. As the massive Imperial fleet began moving toward the station with their eager human prisoners in tow, Admiral Zekathara couldn't shake the feeling that this first contact had not gone according to plan. not according to plan at all. Station Gamma 7 was built for one purpose: breaking the will of newly conquered species. Its interrogation chambers contained the most advanced psychological torture devices in the galaxy. Chief Interrogator Malthek had used these rooms to extract secrets from over 200 different alien species. He had never failed to break a prisoner. Today, he stood outside Interrogation Chamber 7, reviewing the files on his newest subjects. The humans had been separated into groups for processing. 3 of them sat inside the chamber, still displaying those strange upward mouth curves. "Are the recording devices ready?" Malthek asked his assistant. "Yes, Chief. All neural scanners are active. The fear inducement field is at maximum power." Malthek nodded and entered the chamber. The 3 humans looked up at him with what appeared to be curiosity rather than terror. This was already unusual. "I am Chief Interrogator Malthek," he began in his most menacing voice. "You will tell me everything about your species, military capabilities, planetary defenses, and technological level." One of the humans, a female with red hair, raised her hand like a student in a classroom. "Excuse me, sir, but could I ask you a question first?" Malthek's eyes widened. No prisoner had ever asked him a question during interrogation. "What? That device over there," she pointed to the neural agony inducer, "is that based on direct neural interface technology? The design is fascinating. How do you target specific pain receptors without causing permanent brain damage?" What?" Malthek stared at her in confusion. A second human, a male with dark skin, leaned forward eagerly. "And that scanning device above us, is that reading our brain patterns in real time? The sophistication required for that kind of technology is incredible. Our neuroscientists would love to understand how it works." The third human, an older man with gray hair, was actually taking notes on a small device. "Chief Interrogator Malthek, would you mind if I document this process? This is clearly an advanced form of information extraction, and the anthropological implications are enormous." Malthek looked around the chamber as if seeing it for the first time. The walls were covered with devices designed to cause fear and pain. The lighting was deliberately harsh and disorienting. The temperature was kept uncomfortably cold. Everything about this room was carefully designed to break the spirit of prisoners. The humans appeared to be having the time of their lives. "You are not here to ask questions," Malthek finally managed to say. "You are here to answer them. Now tell me about your military." "Oh, of course," the red-haired woman replied cheerfully. "I'm Dr. Lisa Park, xenobiologist. We don't actually have much of a military by galactic standards. Most of our ships are exploratory vessels like the ones you captured. Our biggest weapons are probably nuclear missiles, but those are really primitive compared to what you showed us." "Our defensive capabilities are minimal," added the dark-skinned man. "I'm Dr. James Okafor, astrophysicist. We have some orbital platforms around Earth, but nothing that could stand up to your technology for more than a few minutes. Your power systems alone outclass everything we've built." The older man looked up from his notes. "Professor William Hayes, anthropologist. From a strategic standpoint, we're completely outmatched. But that's what makes this so exciting. We get to learn from a civilization that's clearly thousands of years ahead of us." Malthek felt a strange sensation he had never experienced before. Confusion. These prisoners were voluntarily giving him the exact information he was supposed to torture out of them, and they seemed happy about it. You are telling me this willingly?" "Of course," Dr. Park exclaimed. "Why would we hide anything? You're obviously going to find out anyway, and we're hoping that by being cooperative, we might get to learn more about your civilization in return." "Learning is the foundation of progress," Dr. Okafor added. "This is the greatest educational opportunity in human history." Malthek decided to try a different approach. He activated the fear inducement field, a device that transmitted waves designed to trigger primal terror in most species. The humans paused for a moment, looking thoughtful. Interesting, Professor Hayes said, making more notes. That's definitely affecting our amygdala function. Can you adjust the frequency? I'd love to understand the mechanism better. Are you using electromagnetic fields or some kind of psionic projection? Dr. Park asked. The precision is remarkable. This is incredible, Dr. Okafor practically shouted. You found a way to directly influence emotional responses. The medical applications alone could revolutionize treatment for anxiety disorders. Malthek stared at them in growing panic. The fear inducement field was supposed to reduce prisoners to whimpering terror. These humans were analyzing it like a scientific instrument. You're supposed to be afraid, he said desperately. Oh, we are a little nervous, Dr. Park admitted. But we're much more excited than scared. This is like getting a private tour of the most advanced research facility in the galaxy. The neural agony inducer, Professor Hayes said, pointing again. Could we see that in action? Obviously not on us, he added quickly, but maybe a demonstration on some test material? We'd love to understand the principles involved. Malthek looked at the device, then back at the humans. He had used the neural agony inducer on hundreds of prisoners. It was designed to cause pain so intense that most species would reveal anything to make it stop. And these humans wanted to see a demonstration. You want me to show you how the torture device works? Well, torture is such an ugly word, Dr. Okafor said diplomatically. We prefer to think of it as advanced neuroscience research, though we do appreciate that you're using it for information gathering rather than mere cruelty. That shows a sophisticated understanding of practical applications. Could you tell us about the psychological theories behind your interrogation techniques? Professor Hayes asked. The room design clearly incorporates principles of environmental psychology. The lighting, temperature, spatial arrangement, it's all very deliberate. Malthek slumped into his chair. This was not going according to any plan he knew. He had been trained to break prisoners through fear, pain, and intimidation. But these humans seemed immune to fear, fascinated by pain, and they actually admired his intimidation techniques. Perhaps, Dr. Park suggested gently, we could help each other? We could share information about human psychology and neuroscience, and you could teach us about your advanced technologies? Think of it as an academic exchange program. An exchange program, Malthek repeated slowly. Exactly. We could write joint research papers, comparative analysis of neural interface technologies, or cross-species psychological responses to environmental stressors. The publication opportunities are endless. For the first time in his long career, Chief Interrogator Malthek found himself genuinely considering the scientific merit of torture devices. These humans had somehow turned his interrogation chamber into a classroom, and he was becoming the student. He pressed a button on his desk. Security, please send additional researchers to Interrogation Chamber 7 and contact the Science Division. I think we need a different approach for these prisoners. Should we increase the torture protocols, sir? The security officer asked. Maltheki looked at the three humans who were now examining the wall-mounted pain amplifiers with professional interest. No, he said slowly. I think we need to try something completely different. These humans appear to be educational. As he watched Dr. Park sketch the neural scanning array in her notebook, Malthek realized that for the first time in his career, he was actually curious about his prisoners rather than simply wanting to break them. It was a very disturbing feeling. Admiral Zekthara stood on the observation deck of the Hegemony's Fist, watching the small fleet of human ships floating nearby. 3 days had passed since the interrogation disaster, and he was growing increasingly frustrated. Chief Interrogator Malthek had sent a report that made no sense. Instead of breaking the human prisoners, they had somehow convinced his entire interrogation staff to attend what they called educational seminars. Today, the Admiral had decided to try a different approach. He would demonstrate the true power of the Imperial fleet in a way that would finally make these strange humans understand their situation. Captain Chen, he said over the communication link, Prepare your crew for a demonstration of Imperial military capability. On the screen, the human captain's face lit up with that familiar expression of excitement. A demonstration! How wonderful! What kind of demonstration, Admiral? We will be destroying that moon, Zekthara replied, pointing to a small, lifeless satellite orbiting the system's fourth planet. This will show you the futility of resistance against the Empire. Instead of the expected terror, Captain Chen turned to her crew with obvious delight. Did you hear that, everyone? We're going to see Imperial weapons technology in action. This is incredible. The Admiral watched in bewilderment as humans throughout the bridge began cheering and applauding. Several of them appeared to be setting up recording devices. Rodriguez, are you getting sensor readings on their weapon systems? Captain Chen called out. Yes, Captain. The energy signatures are off the charts. I'm reading antimatter containment systems that shouldn't even be possible. Martinez, prepare the detailed analysis equipment. We need to document everything. Admiral Zekthara had expected many reactions to his announcement of planetary destruction. Celebration was not one of them. You do understand, he said slowly, that I am about to obliterate an entire celestial body? Yes, sir, Captain Chen replied enthusiastically. The engineering required for that kind of power projection is absolutely staggering. Our physicists have been debating whether matter-antimatter annihilation could be scaled up to planetary levels for decades. You're about to settle a major scientific argument. Captain Williams, she called to someone off-screen, contact the astronomy department. They need to see this. Zekthara looked at his weapons officer, Commander Draktar, who was staring at the human ship with the same confused expression that had become common among the Imperial crew. Sir, Draktar whispered, they appear to be excited about us destroying their moon. I can see that, Commander. Should we proceed with the demonstration? The Admiral paused. The purpose of the demonstration was to terrify the humans into submission, but they were already submitted, and instead of being terrified, they seemed to be treating this as some kind of educational entertainment. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice interrupted his thoughts. Before you begin, could I ask about the technical specifications? What's the yield of your planetary destruction weapons? Are you using focused antimatter beams or some kind of gravitational manipulation? That is classified information, Zekthara replied automatically. Of course. We understand completely. But maybe after the demonstration you could give us some general principles? Nothing classified, just the basic physics? Our scientists would be so grateful. Behind Captain Chen, the Admiral could see other humans setting up what appeared to be sophisticated monitoring equipment. They were preparing to study his weapons demonstration like it was a scientific experiment. Very well, he said, giving up on intimidation for the moment. Commander Draktar, begin the demonstration. Target the fourth planet's moon. Yes, sir. Charging primary antimatter cannons. On the human ships, an excited cheer went up. The Admiral watched as dozens of humans pressed against their viewports, recording devices in hand. Energy reading spike detected, someone on the human bridge shouted. Power levels are incredible. Look at the antimatter containment field stabilization. The precision is beautiful. The targeting systems must be quantum-level accurate. Admiral O. Zekthara had never heard weapons fire described as beautiful before. Firing main batteries, Commander Draktar reported. The hegemony's fist unleashed its full power. Streams of contained antimatter lanced out across space, striking the small moon with devastating force. The celestial body simply ceased to exist. Converted instantly into energy and scattered particles, the human response was immediate and overwhelming. Incredible! Captain Chen shouted, jumping up from her chair. Did you see that energy conversion efficiency? The matter-antimatter annihilation was perfectly controlled. The sound of applause and cheering echoed through the communication system. Humans were actually clapping for the destruction of their moon. That was amazing, Dr. Rodriguez called out. The precision targeting, the power regulation, the containment, field management. Admiral, Captain Chen said, turning back to the screen with an expression of pure joy. That was the most impressive display of applied physics I've ever witnessed. The energy output calculations alone are going to keep our scientists busy for years. You enjoyed watching us destroy your moon? Enjoyed? Admiral, that was educational gold. Do you realize what you just demonstrated? You've proven that large-scale antimatter manipulation is not only possible but practical. You've shown that gravitational effects can be precisely calculated and compensated for. You've demonstrated energy control systems that work on a planetary scale. Other humans began crowding around their captain, all talking at once. The targeting. Computer must be quantum-based. The power coupling systems are beyond anything we imagined. The safety protocols alone must be incredibly sophisticated. Admiral Zekthara felt a strange sensation in his chest. He realized it was pride. These aliens were praising his fleet's capabilities with genuine admiration and technical appreciation. No conquered species had ever been impressed by Imperial military demonstrations before. Would it be possible, Captain Chen asked hopefully, to see your personal combat equipment? Our military analyst would love to understand how individual Imperial soldiers are equipped. Before the Admiral could answer, Commander Draktar leaned forward. Sir, if I may, I would be honored to demonstrate Imperial combat gear. Zekthara stared at his weapons officer. You want to show them your equipment? Well, sir, they seem to genuinely appreciate superior technology, and their technical questions are quite insightful. 5 minutes later, Commander Draktar stood in the shuttle bay wearing full Imperial battle armor. The humans had been transported over and were examining the gear with the enthusiasm of children in a toy store. The servo-assisted joints must increase strength by at least 300%. Dr. Martinez exclaimed, "Look at the integrated weapon systems. The ammunition feed mechanisms are works of art. The helmet display must provide complete tactical awareness." Commander Draktar found himself explaining the armor's capabilities in detail. The power source is a miniaturized fusion reactor. The targeting system links directly to ship-based computers. The armor can withstand direct hits from most planetary defense weapons. Incredible, Captain Chen said. Commander, would you mind demonstrating the mobility systems? Draktar activated his armor's movement enhancement and leaped 3 meters into the air, landing with perfect balance. The humans erupted in applause. Encore! Someone shouted. Show us the weapon systems. Can you do that jump again? For the next hour, Commander Draktar found himself performing an impromptu demonstration of Imperial military equipment while dozens of humans cheered and took notes. He demonstrated the armor's strength by lifting a shuttle component that normally required mechanical assistance. He showed off the integrated weapon systems by precisely targeting practice objects. He even demonstrated the armor's life support systems by briefly exposing himself to vacuum. Each demonstration was met with enthusiastic applause and detailed technical questions. This is the best day of my career, Dr. Rodriguez told Commander Draktar during a break. We're learning more about advanced military technology in one afternoon than we could discover in decades of research. You are not concerned that this technology could be used against your species? Draktar asked. Well, yes, that's a valid concern, Captain Chen admitted. But you're clearly so far ahead of us technologically that resistance would be pointless anyway. Since we're going to be part of your empire, we might as well appreciate the incredible engineering achievements we'll get to learn from. As the demonstration continued, Admiral Zekthara realized that his attempt to intimidate the humans had somehow turned into a military technology exhibition. His crew was actually enjoying themselves, and the humans were treating Imperial soldiers like celebrities. Sir, Commander Vextar said quietly, the crew is requesting permission to continue these demonstrations tomorrow. The humans have asked about our ship systems. Admiral Zekthara watched as Commander Draktar signed autographs for a group of human engineers. Permission granted, he said slowly. But I want a full report on why our intimidation tactics keep turning into educational presentations. Yes, Sir, should I schedule the next demonstration for the main conference room? The Admiral looked at his crew, who were clearly eager to show off there. Governor Krellmoth had successfully imposed imperial culture on 47 different conquered worlds. He understood the process perfectly: establish rigid hierarchies, enforce strict compliance, eliminate local customs, and replace them with imperial traditions. The system had never failed, until now. He stood in his temporary office on the human colony of New Geneva, reading reports that made no sense. 3 weeks had passed since the Empire had begun cultural assimilation protocols, and every single initiative had backfired in ways he could never have imagined. Report from Sector 7, his aide, Lieutenant Thexnall, announced nervously. The humans have embraced the new rank structure. That sounds positive, Governor Krellmoth said, cautiously. How have they embraced it? Well, sir, they've started using imperial titles as nicknames. The local administrator is now called Supreme Commander Mike by his staff. The sanitation workers refer to themselves as the Elite Environmental Corps. The teachers have formed something called the Educational Legion. Krellmoth's mandibles twitched. They are mocking our rank system? Not exactly, sir. They seem genuinely enthusiastic about it. They've created elaborate ceremonies for promoting each other. Yesterday, they held a 3-hour celebration because someone was promoted from junior custodial specialist to senior custodial specialist. The governor rubbed his temples. What about the surveillance protocols? Lieutenant Thexnall consulted his notes. The humans have turned the monitoring checkpoints into social gathering areas. They bring food to share with the Imperial Guards. Yesterday, the checkpoint in the Market District received homemade cookies, fresh fruit, and something they call coffee cake. They are bribing our guards? No, sir. They appear to be simply being friendly. Guard Captain Velthar reports that his post has become the most popular duty assignment on the planet. The humans ask the guards about their homeworlds, share stories about Earth, and have started a weekly trivia competition. Krellmoth stared at his aide. A trivia competition? Yes, sir. Imperial Facts and Human Culture Exchange Night. It happens every Thursday. Captain Velthar says he's learned more about human history than he ever wanted to know. The governor pulled up security footage on his desk display. The screen showed one of the surveillance checkpoints where Imperial guards in full armor were sitting at small tables with humans, everyone appearing to be enjoying themselves. One guard was laughing at something a human child had said. Are they maintaining security protocols? Technically, yes, sir. Everyone is still being scanned and processed, but the humans have made it into a social event. They thank the guards for their service, compliment their equipment, and ask thoughtful questions about Imperial culture. Krellmoth switched to another camera feed. This one showed the central administrative building, where humans were lined up to receive new Imperial identification cards. Instead of the usual resentful compliance he expected from conquered populations, the humans were chatting cheerfully with each other and with the Imperial staff. What about the new regulations? Are they following the curfew laws? Yes, sir, but Lieutenant Thexnall hesitated. But what? They've turned curfew into a celebration. Every evening at sunset, they gather in designated areas for what they call Appreciation Hour. They spend the time discussing all the fascinating things they learned about Imperial culture that day. They celebrate being restricted to their homes? Not exactly celebrate, sir. More like they use the time productively. They've organized study groups to learn Imperial languages, cultural exchange sessions where they share human traditions with any Imperial personnel who want to attend, and community improvement projects. Governor Krellmoth pulled up the evening reports. Instead of the usual complaints and resistance he expected from newly conquered populations, the documents were filled with requests. Requests to learn more about Imperial history. Requests for additional cultural exchange programs. Requests to participate in empire-wide projects. Sir, Lieutenant Thexnell continued. There's more. The humans have started fan clubs. Fan clubs? For their Imperial administrators. District Commander Zaltek now has 17 humans who follow him around during his daily inspections, taking notes and asking questions about Imperial governance techniques. They've made him a banner that says, Best Administrator in the Galaxy. The governor brought up another security feed, and sure enough, there was Commander Zaltek conducting his inspection rounds, followed by a group of enthusiastic humans carrying a colorful banner and what appeared to be pom-poms. They have pom-poms? Yes, sir. They learned about them from something called cheerleading in human culture. They've adapted the concept to show appreciation for Imperial efficiency. On the screen, the humans were performing synchronized movements, while chanting something that sounded like ZALTEK, Best Commander in the Sky. Commander Zaltek appeared to be trying to maintain his dignity while also clearly enjoying the attention. What about military drills? Krellmoth asked weakly. The humans have turned them into competitive sports. They've created leagues, rankings, and tournaments. Yesterday's weapons inspection became something called the Imperial Equipment Appreciation Championship. They awarded prizes for most detailed knowledge of pulse rifle specifications and best question about battle armor maintenance. Prizes? Handmade? Trophies, sir. The humans seem to enjoy creating things. They've been making gifts for Imperial personnel, artwork depicting our ships, sculptures honoring Imperial achievements, and what they call friendship bracelets with Imperial symbols. Governor Krellmoth opened his desk drawer and found 3 colorful bracelets with Imperial insignia woven into them. They had appeared on his desk over the past week, along with notes thanking him for his amazing leadership and fascinating cultural guidance. Sir, there's one more thing, Lieutenant Thexnell said carefully. The humans have requested permission to create what they call an Imperial Appreciation Day. What would that involve? Parades honoring Imperial achievements, educational presentations, about galactic history, cultural exhibitions showcasing the diversity of Empire member species, and a feast featuring foods from across Imperial space. They want to throw a party celebrating their own conquest? Yes, sir. They've already begun planning. The preliminary schedule includes morning presentations on amazing Imperial engineering, afternoon workshops on learning Imperial languages, and evening entertainment featuring traditional music from across the galaxy. Governor Krellmoth stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the human colony below. Instead of the subdued, orderly efficiency he expected from a properly conquered population, he saw humans going about their daily activities with obvious enjoyment. They chatted with Imperial guards, decorated their buildings with Imperial symbols, and had somehow made occupation feel like a cultural festival. Sir, Lieutenant Thexnell said quietly, the staff psychologist believes the humans are experiencing something called Stockholm Syndrome, but in reverse. In reverse. Instead of the captives developing positive feelings for their captors, our personnel are developing positive feelings for the humans. Several Imperial officers have requested extended assignments on human worlds. Some have started learning human languages and customs. Are you telling me that our own people are being assimilated by the species we conquered? In a manner of speaking, yes, sir. Governor Krellmoth returned to his desk and sat down heavily. He had successfully imposed Imperial culture on 47 worlds using fear, authority, and strict control. The humans had made all of those tools useless by simply being enthusiastic about everything the Empire did. Lieutenant, send a message to High Command. Request immediate consultation on unusual assimilation challenges. What should I tell them, sir? Tell them that the humans appear to have weaponized friendliness, and we have no defense against it. As Lieutenant Thexnell left to send the message, Governor Krellmoth picked up one of the friendship bracelets from his desk. It was actually quite skillfully made, with intricate patterns that somehow incorporated both Imperial symbols and what appeared to be human designs. He found himself putting it on. This is most concerning, he muttered to himself. but he didn't take the bracelet off. Outside his window, a group of humans was setting up decorations for something called Imperial Heritage Week. They had somehow obtained accurate imperial historical symbols and were arranging them into what appeared to be an educational display. One of them waved at his window with obvious enthusiasm. Governor Krellmoth found himself waving back before. He could stop himself. Most concerning indeed, he repeated, but there was less conviction in his voice than before. Admiral Zekthara stood in his quarters aboard the Hegemony's Fist, staring at a wall covered with human artwork. Over the past 6 months, the humans had somehow transformed his ship from a vessel of conquest into something that felt almost like a cultural exchange center. The walls were decorated with paintings depicting imperial achievements, sculptures honoring galactic diversity, and charts showing the historical expansion of the empire, all created by enthusiastic human artists. He was studying a particularly detailed painting of the Battle of Centauri Prime when his communication system chimed. "Admiral," came the voice of his communications officer, "we have received urgent priority messages from Imperial Command. The Hegemony Council requests immediate conference." Very well. Establish the connection. The holographic projectors activated, and suddenly Zekthara's quarters were filled with the imposing figures of the 5 supreme counselors of the Galactic Empire. High Counselor Vex Miran, a towering figure from the warrior species that had founded the Empire, spoke first. "Admiral Zekthara, we have reviewed your reports regarding the human integration process. We find them difficult to believe." "I understand your skepticism, High Counselor. I would not have believed them myself 6 months ago. You claim that your crew efficiency has increased by 30% since the humans joined your fleet. Operations? That is correct. The humans have introduced what they call optimization enthusiasm. They study our procedures, suggest improvements, and celebrate every efficiency gain as if it were a major victory. Counselor Theklani, representing the science cast, leaned forward. "And they have voluntarily shared all of their technological knowledge?" "More than shared. They have insisted on teaching it to us. Dr. Chen and her team have conducted over 200 educational seminars for Imperial personnel. They seem to believe that knowledge sharing benefits everyone." "Most concerning," muttered Counselor Ralseth from the administrative caste. "Our cultural assimilation protocols are designed to eliminate local customs, not adopt them." "About that," Admiral Zekthara said carefully, "the humans have introduced some practices that have proven beneficial to fleet operations." High Counselor Vex Miran's voice carried a warning tone. "Explain." "They have instituted daily appreciation circles where crew members acknowledge each other's contributions. Morale has increased significantly. They have also introduced problem-solving parties where technical challenges are addressed through group collaboration. Our engineering efficiency has improved markedly." "You are telling us," Counselor Drakmel said slowly, "that human customs are being adopted by Imperial personnel? The crew seems to find them engaging." "Admiral," High Counselor Vex Miran's voice was stern, "you will immediately return to Imperial Center for debriefing. This situation requires direct intervention." Before Zekthara could respond, another alarm sounded throughout the ship. "Admiral, to the bridge," came Commander Vextar's urgent voice. "We have a priority tactical situation." "Counselors, I must respond to this emergency. I will resume communications as soon as possible." Zekthara hurried to the bridge, where he found his crew working with unusual intensity. Captain Chen and several other humans were at auxiliary stations, integrating seamlessly with Imperial personnel. "Report," the Admiral commanded. "Sir," Commander Vextar said, "long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching this system. Configuration and energy signatures match the Zarketh Collective." Admiral Zekthara felt his blood chill. The Zarketh Collective was the Empire's oldest and most dangerous enemy. They were a species of aggressive expansionists who had been fighting the Empire for over 2 centuries. "Fleet composition?" 47 heavy battleships, 123 destroyers, and at least 300 support vessels. They appear to be moving toward the human colonies in this sector. Captain, Chen looked up from her station. Admiral, our sensor data suggests they're specifically targeting human worlds. They may have identified us as a weak point in Imperial defenses. Estimated time to intercept? 18 hours, sir. Admiral Zekthara studied the tactical display. His current force consisted of 12 Imperial ships plus the 3 human exploration vessels. They were vastly outnumbered. Sir, Captain Chen said quietly, may I make a suggestion? Proceed. The Zarketh probably expect either a standard Imperial defensive formation or a complete retreat. They won't be expecting creative tactics. What do you propose? Well, we've been learning about Imperial weapons and defensive systems for 6 months. And you've been learning about human approaches to problem solving. What if we combine them? Commander Vextar looked skeptical. Captain Chen, with respect, your ships are not equipped for this level of combat. No, but we're equipped for other things. Our ships are small, fast, and full of people who are very good at thinking outside standard tactical frameworks. Explain. Captain Chen moved to the central tactical display. The Zarketh fleet is impressive, but it's also predictable. They use standard battle formations because they've been fighting the same way for centuries. But what if we don't fight the way they expect? She began highlighting areas on the display. Our ships could act as forward scouts and coordination nodes. We're small enough to avoid most of their heavy weapons, and we've been studying Imperial communication systems. We could provide real-time tactical coordination for your fleet while conducting harassment attacks. Harassment attacks with exploration vessels? Dr. Rodriguez has been working with your engineering staff on some modifications. We've adapted our sensor arrays to work as jamming systems. Dr. Martinez has figured out how to overload our communication transmitters to create electromagnetic interference. And Professor Hayes has developed psychological warfare strategies based on Zarketh cultural analysis. Admiral Zekthara looked at his tactical officer. Is this feasible? Sir, their proposals are unconventional, but the engineering modifications are sound, and the tactical coordination could provide significant advantages. Admiral, Captain Chen continued, there's something else. My crew has been talking, and we want to fight alongside your fleet. You want to fight? You are civilians. We're humans who have just found the most amazing civilization in the galaxy, and someone is trying to destroy it. That makes this personal. Around the bridge, other humans nodded in agreement. We've learned more in 6 months than we ever imagined possible, Dr. Rodriguez added. This empire has become our home, too. Admiral Zekthara found himself genuinely moved by their loyalty. Very well. We will coordinate our defense. All ships prepare for modified tactical formation. Over the next 18 hours, the combined fleet prepared for battle in ways that had never been attempted before. Imperial ships were equipped with human-designed communication enhancements. Human vessels received Imperial defensive upgrades. Most importantly, tactical planning sessions became collaborative efforts between Imperial commanders and human strategists. Admiral, came High Counselor Vex Mirren's voice over the still-open communication link. What is happening? Our sensors show massive fleet movements in your sector. High Counselor, we are about to engage a Zarketh invasion force. The humans have volunteered to fight alongside us. The humans want to fight for the Empire? They want to fight for their friends. High Counselor, apparently that includes us now. When the Zarketh fleet arrived, they found something they had never encountered before. An Imperial force that didn't behave according to any known tactical doctrine. Human ships darted between the massive Zarketh vessels like insects, jamming communications and creating confusion. Imperial ships used the chaos to execute precision strikes with devastating effect. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, The Zarketh fleet was in full retreat, having lost over half their ships to tactics they couldn't understand or counter. "Admiral," Captain Chen said over the communication link from her damaged but intact ship, "I think we make a pretty good team." "Indeed we do, Captain. Indeed we do." On the holographic display, High Counselor Vex Mirren was staring at the battle results in amazement. "Admiral, how did a fleet 1/3 the size of the enemy achieve such a decisive victory?" "Human ingenuity. Combined with Imperial strength, High Counselor, they have taught us new ways to think about old problems. And you believe this partnership is beneficial to the Empire?" Admiral Zekthara looked around his bridge, where Imperial and human crew members were working together to coordinate rescue operations for damaged ships from both fleets. Commander Vexitar was discussing tactical improvements with Dr. Rodriguez. Captain Chen was sharing medical supplies with the Imperial medical staff. "High Counselor, 6 months ago, I believe the Empire's strength came from our ability to conquer and control other species. I have learned that there is a different kind of strength that comes from earning their genuine loyalty and friendship. You are suggesting a fundamental change in Imperial policy?" "I am suggesting that these humans have shown us something we never knew we were missing. They have turned conquest into cooperation, and somehow made us stronger in the process." "High." Counselor Vex Mirren was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, return to Imperial Center as planned, but bring the humans with you. The Council needs to meet these people personally." "Yes, High Counselor."